Hello, this is Pacific.ca from the Pacific coast of Canada. Today we present segments from the conclusion of the second reading of the South Coast Transportation Act 2014. The current government proposes the introduction of referendum to the financing of public transportation. Politicians on the opposition believe that referendum is being misused as a delayed tactic to deflect the government's irresponsibility to adequately fund public transportation. Apart from the potential misuse of referendum, direct democracy by referendum has been well used and supported recently in BC by a significant number of citizens. Here on nowpolling.ca, provincial governments, you go to transportation systems, you choose BC Transit, and here is a poll where you can participate. If you don't see your initiative, your choice, your opinion listed here, the only reason is that you have not added it here yet. Here are segments of the MLA's concluding debate.
Minister of Education.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm delighted to rise again today to conclude my remarks on my support for Bill 23. I again want to compliment the Minister of Transportation and his staff for working closely with the Mayor's Council on Regional Transportation in Metro Vancouver to find a process and a resolution to the important question that will be put to the taxpayers, and that is how will transportation be funded in the metro area. So, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I urge everyone in this House to recognize that the relationship between the Mayor's Council and the Government of British Columbia and all of the stakeholders is the best it's ever been. We have a unique opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to work together, to reinforce the vision that already exists, to augment it as might be necessary, to develop a funding formula that the people who live in Metro Vancouver and the business community that serves us can look at it and say, that is the vision that we agree with, and we also agree with the funding recommendations that will be developed and put forward in a referendum to serve that need, not only now, but into the future. Mr. Speaker, I also know that the Mayor's Council is clear, as is TransLink and the board, and our minister in this government, that people need to understand what that bill is all about. They need to understand what the funding mechanisms are going to be, and they need to understand and be clear on the question they're being asked. And Mr. Speaker, I believe we have the tools, we have the willingness, and I encourage all of us to put our shoulder to the wheel and to make sure that we do that job in the interests of not only Metro Vancouver, but the entire province. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank the Minister and recognize a member from North Island.
To devolve the question of tax policy to referenda really does take away the authority of elected bodies. It's just saying, it goes to every time, if you have to go to the people every time you want to make a tax increase, you have to start questioning why you have elected bodies in place. I mean, we have governments in place, Mr. Speaker, who are there. One of the things they are charged with is to make tax policy and to make decisions on behalf of their electorate. To go back time and again to the electorate and to say, this is something that is coming back to you, you're going to have to make the decision, I think it is bad policy. This is not the system of government we work in. We work in a system of government which respects those who are elected to make those decisions. So with the best will in the world, best sales job in the world, you go to somebody and say, oh, by the way, are you willing to pay an extra 2% for your transit? A lot of people are going to say no. They're going to say, well, why should I? I pay my taxes. So it should be part of a greater debate. It shouldn't come down to referenda politics. And I think this is a huge problem when you get to referenda politics, when it devolves down to each attempt to raise money coming down to the individual voter. I think it's a really exceedingly dangerous way of going, and it's not the system that we in this province have or should adopt. We should be allowing that our elected representatives have that authority. I do hope that the government does rethink this before we continue with this and before this becomes the law, because to establish this as law, to entrench referenda for every time that the TransLink mayors need to raise money is short-sighted and simply bad economic and social policy. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank the member. Recognize the member from Burnaby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to rise today to support Bill 23 put forward by the Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure. I believe this is a great way to go for, in this case, a direct democracy, because it's a way for the mayors to put forward their 30 years of vision regarding strategy and 10-year funding formula to how to get new infrastructures and new additional funding source in order to support those infrastructures. I would also like to point out that the member from North Island, she said that she does not agree with a tax policy in terms of referenda. I think the same group of people supporting you. You support the tax policy by referendum about 2 years ago. It's called a HST referendum. So campaign on that, and I think this is nothing new in terms of a tax policy by a referendum. I also would like to point out this is an important issue for direct democracy. In many countries, of course, they go to vote almost every now and then, very short interval to make policy, local policy in terms of casting a vote to make decisions on how to proceed with policies in a local level. I think in many countries in Europe, they use that kind of more direct democracy more frequently. This is nothing new in introducing this bill. Our government is actually committed last year when we have the election to make a promise. Promise is that before new fees or taxes are used to expand the Metro Vancouver transportation system, there should be a referendum. So I think this is an issue we campaign on, and the voters actually had their say already, and today is a promise made and a promise to be delivered. Thank you to the chair and to the House for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank the member and recognize the member from Vancouver Point Grey.
So when you've got 500,000 times that a bus drives past somebody, standing in the rain, not picking them up, you cannot blame that person for not taking the bus next time, for buying a car, for getting a parking pass at UBC, and driving themselves to school so that they can make it to work, so that they can make it to their class on time. Now, obviously, that is not a sustainable approach. We're past the point of sustainability, and we're at the crisis level on the Broadway corridor. But it's not just the Broadway corridor. This is a system-wide problem. Friends at CUPE prepared a study of the number of buses available to the system right now. 1,003 conventional buses and 1,005 community shuttle buses for a total of 1,108 buses serve Metro Vancouver during the AM rush hour. And yet TransLink's plan calculated that the region would require a bus fleet of 1,600 buses. So even if you take out West Vancouver and the private operators in New West and Langley Aldergrove, you're still 430 buses short for projections to 2006. And as I noted in question period, Mr. Speaker, this is 2014. This document that came from TransLink showed that there were 4,800 trip denials for riders in 2008. In 2012, that number reached 37,000 trip denials. 37,000. According to TransLink, our current sources of revenue do not allow TransLink to expand transit service. So people with disabilities, senior citizens in Vancouver, trying to get handy dart service, being denied service today, right now. Mr. Speaker, we might be getting to the point where we ask, well, what does this have to do with the referendum? This is exactly what the referendum's about. We're going to get some funding for this essentially desperately needed transit improvement along the Broadway corridor. And we're going to buy the buses that we need. Well, the problem is, what happens when the referendum says no? What if it says no? And I think we can all agree that fewer traffic jams would be a really great idea for the City of Vancouver, and we don't need to put it to a referendum. We can start action on it right away. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and those conclude my remarks. I hope that the government reconsiders this very poorly planned initiative.
Thank the member and recognize the member from Richmond-Steveston.
Sustainability, Mr. Speaker, is important to my constituents and to British Columbians. We need a financial model that not only is sustainable but has the support of those that will be helping to pay for it. And as has been said, there is only one taxpayer, and our government has consistently stood for, continues to stand for, keeping taxes affordable for British Columbians. And we did, about a year ago, during the last election campaign, talk about how, if we were re-elected, we would deal with transit in Greater Vancouver, and a commitment was made, Mr. Speaker. A commitment to British Columbians was made that if we were re-elected, we would introduce a referendum to ensure that those living in the Greater Vancouver area understood the options for potentially new ways of funding transit, and that that through the referendum would support these new taxes or ways of funding. In asking people to vote on a new transportation vision that will meet the needs of the region into the next decades, the people living in the region need a clear understanding of what the projects are. All of these are great projects, but they cost a lot of capital. And it's important that the people who will eventually be paying for this have an opportunity to express their opinion through this referendum. So, Mr. Speaker, I support Bill 23 and look forward to the continued comments from other members. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member. Member for Burnley-Deer Lake.
This government has been ragging the puck for at least 4 years. In 2010, almost 4 years ago, in earlier 2000 and in later 2010, the province and the mayors signed a regional transportation agreement. What have we had since? We've had absolutely nothing. We've had, over the past several years, we've had 3 audits. We have ministers auditing each other. We've had delay after delay. We've had no action whatsoever, and what's the result? What's the result for the Lower Mainland? As my colleagues have said, most recently my colleague from Vancouver Point Grey, what you have is a result of the lack of funding of transit in the Lower Mainland. What you have is you have students getting frustrated and not believing in the transit system. Caused a 3-year delay in the Evergreen line. Massive service cuts. Now we're getting massive service cuts to bus routes, especially south of the Fraser.